today on Watch with Poppy, we're going to be talking about the latest episode of Deception. I know I'm looking a little different today, rocking the scarf. I'm really having a really bad hair day, is the truth. But I'm not going to let a bad hair day stop me from talking to you guys about what went down on Deception last night, because I felt like last night, was a pretty good episode, so let's kind of get to it. More and more I feel like Robert Bowers is just looking guilty. Guilty. I mean, just like, we learned a lot of kind of like underhanded stuff about him in this episode. My only problem is that, like, he's been my #1 suspect so far, and now all of a sudden he seems really guilty. So usually that means that he's not the guilty one because he's way too obvious. So like in this episode, we've got that scene at the beginning with him and Julian where he basically tells Julian, you need to bribe the guy at the FDA because they know that Haverstock is not going to let Lyritrol pass through. And so Dad tells Julian, look, you need to bribe the guy who's second in charge. And Julian's like, look, I could go to jail. And his dad's all like, well, just make sure you don't get caught, which is just like, ugh, really? Like, is that the kind of parenting we want to do? And so Julian ends up doing it, and by the end of the episode, Lyritrol has been approved by the FDA, which is a little scary because obviously we know that Lyritrol is really kind of a dangerous drug, or at least we think we know that. That's what we've been led to believe so far. Now, the tabloid reporter, remember Nicole from a couple of episodes ago, she's the one who leaked the story about Mia. She's still like on the job. She's still investigating the Bowers family, even though she technically doesn't have a job. So I'm not really sure what she's doing there. So she gets a tip about the girl in the pictures with Julian Bowers, the girl who we know is Joanna. And so she finds out that Joanna is a police officer, so she starts following Joanna. So Joanna, meanwhile, is actually tracking down a lead for the FBI. At the beginning of the episode, we learned that the FBI found out that Ben was actually murdered, so they tracked the last phone call that he made, the phone call that he made on the payphone before he went across the street. And so they track it to another payphone, and so Joanna goes to kind of investigate. When she gets there, eventually everyone realizes that this payphone is outside of a bakery, and this bakery is basically run by the Russian mob. So that's not a good thing, and it's not a good thing that she goes in there not realizing that, and she's by herself. So, of course, she's in the bakery, looking around, when all of a sudden, here comes Nicole, the tabloid reporter, and she just, outs her right on the spot, like, you're a cop, and she says it all loud. So, of course, the guys in the bakery are just like, crap, there's a cop in here, what's she doing in here? And the next thing you know, guns are drawn, and there's running and bullets flying everywhere. Now, while she's in the bakery as well, I will note that Joanna sees one of the guys that's there, and she remembers him. She flashes back to when she was in the Bahamas with Julian, and she went into his room, and there was somebody in there trying to steal his computer. She remembers this guy's face. So we're not sure how, but obviously somehow and somewhere the Russian mob is involved in everything that's going on, which is deep, very deep. So like I said, there's lots of running, lots of bullets flying as Joanna and Nicole try to escape. And in the end, Will kind of shows up and saves the day because Joanna doesn't have a gun with her, so it's just kind of craziness. They also kind of sit Nicole down and are just like, you gotta stop, what are you doing? You're gonna get yourself killed, you're gonna get someone killed. And it sounds like she's kind of going to be on their side, she kind of tells him, it's going to be good to work with you. And so you get that she's going to be kind of digging for clues, which might not be a bad thing because she's obviously really good at that. Now let's talk about Sophia for a bit because in this episode there were these kind of flashbacks that were very interesting where it looks like we're seeing Sophia as a young girl, come to the big city for the first time. We see her get a phone call from this guy and his name is Wyatt. We get that Wyatt's in prison and he says something to her like he wants to thank her for paying for his protection in jail. And so to me, that makes me think, okay, was the money that she took to that guy last week, is that what that was for? We get that this Wyatt guy, she's obviously involved with him because there's a really quick flashback at one point where you see her with blood on her hands and him with her, and so he obviously went to jail and she didn't. And he tells her that he's about to get out on parole, and she doesn't look all that happy about it. Later in the episode, I thought this was interesting. She goes to see Senator Haverstock, out at a restaurant, and basically asks him to block this guy's parole. So this guy's obviously a part of her past, and she's not all that interested in reconnecting with him. Now, in this episode, Mia actually does go back home, and there are a few scenes between her and Sophia where at first she's just really cold, and it's just like she just doesn't want to hear about it from either of her parents. And they're going out that night because there's a big party for the Bowers Pharmaceutical Company, as they're going to kind of introduce Lyritrol and all this kind of stuff. And while her parents are gone, she decides to have a party. So she invites all of her friends over, and before you know it, it looks like there's like 50, 60, 70 teenagers drinking and like having a good time in her house. And Kyle shows up, and then Kyle makes a phone call, and you hear Kyle say, like, if you're going to do it, now's the time. And then before you know it, who should show up at the house but Senator Haverstock? So I think we can go ahead and say for sure that Kyle is working for the senator. So the senator comes to see Mia and tells her that he's her father. He again does the whole, I loved your mother, there's not a day goes by that I don't think about her crap. But I think Mia's not really buying that all that much. And, you know, you kind of get that Mia is, like, even though she's young, she's definitely kind of mature in some ways and kind of jaded in some ways. So it's like their interaction is really weird. Like, she doesn't really give him much of a response. Because I think he really kind of is wanting to know her for what reason we don't know. Now let's flash to the party, you know, the big Bowers party for Lyritrol. You know, Robert gets up to announce to everyone that Lyritrol has been approved by the FDA, and he's talking. Meanwhile, Edward. Let's talk about Edward for a second. My favorite deception character. Edward's been doing some, you know, homework of his own. He finally gets somebody to decode the information that Ben was trying to get off of the computers at Bowers Pharmaceutical. And this person tells him, like, this is the real information of what happened at the trials. Over 100 people died. That's on this kind of disc. 24 of them were children. And there's also proof that Dad, Robert Bowers, paid off all of the people who had loved ones that died in the trials. So now Edward has the proof that Vivian wasn't lying, she was telling the truth. And so he goes to the party, right, and he approaches Julian to try to be like, look, I've got this information, like, we can't do this. And Julian's just like, pretty much like, you're a murderer, don't try to like come back and you know, use this to try to make yourself look better. And before the party is over, they get into a fight. So as Dad is like making this huge announcement, the two of them are like fighting, and by the end of it, Edward just yells, I quit, and he leaves the party. So he definitely made an entrance, made himself known, and then left. Okay, so let's talk about J&J. So obviously Joanna is living at Julian's apartment now, and there's a couple of scenes there where you see them in the morning like making breakfast, and Mia's there, and it's just all like, oh, aren't we a little happy family? And then Audrey shows up. Remember Audrey, the girl who's working for their competitor, but she and Julian have a past. She shows up this whole episode and she's being really flirty with him and like, it's just a lot. In the end, we realize that it's all a part of her work, really. It's not real. She finds out that Lyritrol got past the FDA, and so, you know, it's her job to basically stop them, and so she's using that attraction between her and Julian to try to do that. So the big J&J moment happens at the party. Joanna shows up. She's got this lovely dress on, and, you know, her and Julian do the looky-look thing that they always do from across the room. Until finally he comes over, and he's in such a rush. It was so cute. Like, he bumps into the waiter, and it was just kind of funny. But, like, he comes over, and he's just like, let's stop playing games. Like, I want something to happen here between the two of us. He grabs her hand, and he tells her, like, you know, whoever this guy is that you're seeing, I want you to break up with him. Break his heart, don't break my heart. And you could see that Joanna is, like, really moved by this. Like, he tells her, like, I feel something happening, and I want it to happen. And you get that she does, too. But she tells him that she doesn't feel the same way. And he's just kind of like, okay, like, I read that completely wrong. Like, I'm sorry, like, okay, just forget I said anything, and he walks away. Now, let's talk about this for a moment, right? Because we know that Joanna obviously is lying in that moment. Because even when Julian leaves, you can see that she's, like, overwhelmed. Like, she looks like she's about to start crying. And I really think, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, I think the reason she doesn't want to do anything now is because she's in the middle of this investigation. So she will tell him she doesn't feel the same way now because really, she's not showing him who she really is. So I think she feels like it would be unfair to her to kind of start a relationship with him in the middle of a murder investigation when she's really kind of lying. I mean, like, the whole title of this show is Deception, and she is deceiving him and the family, and obviously there's a whole lot of deception going on in this show, but I think that's her reason for doing that, you know, that if there is going to be something that happens, she wants it to be because he sees her for who she is, for real. And it just makes me wonder, okay, where are they going to go with J&J? Because obviously there's an attraction between the two of them, so I don't know, something's gotta happen, I think, for that to move forward. At the end of the episode, too, you get that, you know, Joanna saying no really pushes Julian into Audrey's arms. And so, at the end of the episode, we see him showing up on her doorstep, like, can I come in, type of thing. And, which is not a good thing, because we know that she's a corporate spy, so that can't be good. Yeah, guys, I really thought this was a good episode. I like this show. I know so many people don't. And I know I've talked about ratings and stuff on here, but it just doesn't look good for Deception, which makes me so sad. Like, I definitely think we'll see them play out the run of the first season for sure, like the 12 or 14 episodes. I'm not sure how many they recorded, but I'm sure we'll be seeing all of those. But I feel like after that, we're not going to see much more. I guess we'll have to wait and see, though. It's not like this show has officially been canceled, but it hasn't been renewed. Here's fingers crossed, you know, that we get to find out at least who murdered Vivian before they do that. That would make me happy. And if we could get some Julian and Joanna love, that would be lovely too. Okay, you guys, that's it for me today. Thanks so much, as always, for watching. Thanks for commenting and subscribing and all that other fun stuff. I will talk to you guys again soon. Bye.